The night air in Brimsdown, Enfield was thick with a damp chill, but inside 284 Green Street, the cold was of a different kind. It clung to the walls, a pervasive psychic dread that had taken up residence in the modest council house. It was August 1977, and what had started with a few misplaced chairs had escalated into a full-scale siege of the Hodgson family. Peggy Hodgson, a woman worn thin by worry and the weight of her 4 children, lay in bed, listening. The house was silent, but it was a brittle silence, stretched taut like a drumskin waiting for a strike. She was listening for the sounds that had become their constant companions: the scraping of furniture across the floor, the low, guttural growls that seemed to come from nowhere and everywhere at once. The terror had truly begun with a series of sharp knocks on the bedroom walls. At first, Peggy blamed a faulty water pipe, a common enough problem in their neighborhood. But the knocks had a rhythm, a purpose. They would follow the children, particularly 11-year-old Janet, from room to room. A single sharp rap behind her as she did her homework. A series of frantic knocks from beneath her bed as she tried to sleep. The family's sleep was a fragile thing, constantly shattered by the disembodied percussion. Then, the furniture began to move on its own. One evening, Peggy walked into the living room to find an armchair slowly, deliberately sliding across the floor. She screamed, her heart hammering against her ribs, and the chair stopped. But the message was clear. They were not alone. One night, the children's bunk beds began to shake violently, as if an invisible giant were trying to tear them apart. A heavy chest of drawers was seen to lift from the floor and turn, as if to block the doorway. The family's pleas for help went unanswered by all but a handful of brave, or perhaps foolish, individuals. The police officer who responded to their initial call reported seeing a chair slide across the floor unaided. "I've never seen anything like it," she'd said, her voice a thin whisper of disbelief. Paranormal researchers Maurice Gross and Guy Lyon Playfair arrived with their cameras and microphones. They were the first to truly document the madness. They captured the sounds, the thumps and knocks on audio tape. They saw a fireplace poker bend into a perfect semicircle before their eyes. But it was Janet who became the entity's primary vessel. The entity had found its voice, a chilling, croaking baritone that sounded like an old man struggling for air. It would speak through Janet, but it was not her voice. It was a vile, mocking thing that claimed to be the spirit of a man named Bill Wilkins, who had died in the house in a chair in the corner of the living room. "I'm blind now," the voice would rasp. "I'm blind and can't see." The voice would taunt the family and the researchers, offering vulgarities and threats. It knew their secrets, their fears, and it used them as ammunition. It would follow Janet everywhere, a malevolent shadow in the form of sound. On one occasion, the voice announced, "I will jump out of the window now." Janet was seen to levitate in her bedroom, a terrifying, motionless flight through the air, before being slammed back down onto her bed. The researchers' cameras captured a series of photographs showing her suspended, as if a puppet on invisible strings. One night, the terror reached its crescendo. Peggy Hodgson sat in her living room, her children asleep, the house quiet for the first time in months. She had a brief, fleeting moment of peace before a low, guttural growl emanated from the darkness of the hall. The growl was not directed at her. It was a sound of pure rage. Suddenly, from Janet's bedroom, a deafening crash echoed through the house. Peggy ran upstairs to find Janet's wardrobe overturned, its contents strewn across the floor. As she knelt to pick up the clothes, the door to the room slammed shut with a thunderous bang. The lights went out. In the darkness, the low growl returned, closer now, right beside her ear. A cold, invisible presence brushed past her face. She felt a sharp, burning sensation on her arm, and when she frantically fumbled for her lighter, she saw a red mark, like a burn, forming on her skin. Then, the voice. It came not from Janet's mouth, but from the darkness in the corner of the room. It was not the familiar old man's rasp. This was a new voice, a whisper like a million dead leaves scraping across a tombstone. It was pure, unadulterated evil. "You are not safe here, Peggy," it hissed. "No one is." Peggy grabbed her daughter from her bed, her hands shaking so hard she could barely hold her. As she ran for the stairs, she felt a strong, unseen force pull at her clothes, trying to hold her back. The children screamed, the furniture began to shake violently, and from the living room below, the sound of glass shattering echoed through the house. The family escaped the house that night, but the torment followed them. The knocks and the disembodied voice would continue for months, a haunting that would forever be a part of their lives. They had survived, but they carried with them the memory of the cold that had chilled their home, the invisible forces that had terrorized them, and the voice that had become the sound of pure evil itself. The Enfield poltergeist had not just haunted a house, it had possessed a family, and they would never truly be free.